Most people think population shifts happen slowly, over decades, gradual changes that unfold across generations. But in the last 4 years, something unprecedented has happened across America. Entire communities have started moving at a pace the country has not seen in modern history. Families are giving up long-held zip codes. Professionals are walking away from cities that once defined their careers. And middle-class households are leaving states they assumed would be home forever. According to the United States Census Bureau, this massive reshuffling shows up clearly in a metric called net domestic migration, the number of people moving into a state from elsewhere in the country minus the number moving out. And from April 2020 to July 2024, the results reveal a dramatic shift. In some states, housing costs have disconnected so far from wages that even solid earners are being priced out. In others, taxes, insurance, or basic cost of living are rising faster than paychecks can keep up. And across several regions, decades of economic stagnation or climate-related risks have finally pushed residents to look somewhere else for stability. This countdown examines the 10 states Americans are leaving the most, and more importantly, the reasons behind those choices. Some of these places were magnets for opportunity not long ago. Others were considered stable, predictable, even idyllic. But during the last few years, the ground shifted. For a growing number of people, staying simply became too expensive, too stressful, or too uncertain. By the end of this countdown, you will understand exactly why millions of Americans are moving and how these shifts are redefining U.S. migration patterns for the next decade. Number 10, Ohio. Ohio is one of those states that feels familiar and dependable, the kind of place where people expect stability. But from April 2020 through July 2024, the state still saw a net domestic migration loss of about 38,000 residents. It is not dramatic on the surface, yet it reflects a deeper shift that has been building for years. Much of the problem traces back to Ohio's industrial core. Cities like Cleveland, Youngstown, and Toledo are still dealing with the aftermath of factory closure, aging downtown, and economic slowdowns that never fully reverse. Even as Columbus grows and attracts new companies, the overall momentum is not strong enough to counterbalance the steady outflow of younger workers. Many in their 20s see limited advancement at home and look towards states with faster growth in technology, healthcare, engineering, and logistics. The narrative is familiar. Young professionals leave for college and never return, or they spend a few years trying to build a career in Ohio before accepting that better opportunities exist elsewhere. Climate does not help either. Long stretches of gray skies, lake-effect snow, and harsh winters push many residents to imagine a lifestyle with more sun and fewer heating bills. When they compare cost, wages, and opportunities in states across the South and West, the decision to leave often becomes practical rather than emotional. Ohio is not declining outright, but it is losing ground to places that feel more dynamic and more financially rewarding. Number 9, Minnesota. Minnesota is a state that consistently ranks well in quality of life surveys. Strong schools, low unemployment, and cultural amenities. Yet, from April 2020 to July 2024, it still recorded a net domestic migration loss of nearly 48,000 residents. It is a reminder that a state can have strong amenities on paper, but still struggle to keep people in practice. The Twin Cities offer cultural attractions, solid schools, and large employers, but they also come with rising housing costs and some of the highest state and local tax burdens in the Midwest. For many middle-class families, especially younger couples, the financial gap between staying in Minnesota versus relocating to Wisconsin, the Dakotas, or the Sun Belt has widened enough to spark serious reconsideration. Weather compounds the issue. Minnesota's winters are not merely cold. They are long, dark, and defined by snowstorms that reshape daily life. The emotional and financial toll of months of extreme cold pushes some residents to consider places where winter is more of a season than a survival event. Public safety discussions after 2020 also played a role. While opinions vary, a portion of residents decided they wanted a different environment entirely, one with less political friction or more predictable public policy. Minnesota still offers stability and opportunity, but the rising cost-to-benefit ratio has convinced many that their future lies elsewhere. Number 8, Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania is a state filled with history, tradition, and strong regional identity. Yet from April 2020 through July 2024, it still lost roughly 49,000 residents to other states. What makes this significant is not the size of the decline, but the long-term pattern it represents. For many Pennsylvanians, the opportunities they want simply are not where they grew up. Across the state, older industrial cities like Johnstown, Erie, Scranton, and even parts of Pittsburgh continue to feel the aftermath of decades of manufacturing decline. While some neighborhoods have rebuilt pockets of growth, many younger residents find the job market too limited compared to fast-expanding metros in the South and Mountain West. Once people leave after college or early in their careers, they often do not return. Taxes also influence the decision to move. Pennsylvania's flat income tax looks manageable on the surface, but local property taxes and school district levies can cut deeply into household budgets, especially in communities where wages have stalled. Add aging infrastructure, uneven school performance, and slower job creation, and relocating becomes less of a gamble and more of a practical step toward affordability. Older residents contribute to the trend as well. Many retirees are choosing warmer, lower tax states like Florida or the Carolinas, accelerating the overall outflow. Pennsylvania remains a culturally rich and deeply rooted state, but the numbers show a slow, steady drain of residents seeking better value and stronger economic momentum. Number 7. Hawaii. Hawaii is the ultimate postcard destination. Turquoise water, volcanic mountains, and sunsets that feel unreal. But for the people who call the islands home, daily life has become so expensive that many can no longer stay. Between April 2020 and July 2024, Hawaii lost more than 50,000 residents through net domestic migration, one of the highest per capita declines in the entire country. The biggest reason is housing. Even modest homes regularly list above $1 million, and rents have climbed far beyond what many local salaries can support. Utilities are among the most expensive in the nation. Groceries come with a shipping premium, and insurance costs have risen sharply. The financial pressure is not theoretical. It shapes every aspect of life, from family planning to long-term career choices. Then there is the job market. Tourism dominates the economy, providing steady work but limited upward mobility. For young adults who want career growth in fields like technology, finance, or engineering, opportunities on the mainland look far more achievable. Many leave reluctantly, knowing they may not be able to afford a return. This disconnect, loving the islands but being unable to stay, has created a quiet exodus. Thousands of Hawaii residents have moved to California, Washington, Nevada, or Texas in search of a sustainable future. Hawaii remains paradise, but for many locals, paradise no longer feels livable. Number 6. Michigan. Michigan has been working hard to reinvent itself, and some cities are seeing real progress. But from April 2020 through July 2024, the state still recorded a net domestic migration loss of nearly 68,000 residents. It is a reminder that even with pockets of renewal, long-standing structural issues continue to push people away. Much of the state's challenge comes from its industrial legacy. While Detroit is no longer the symbol of collapse it once was, many smaller cities and rural counties have not recovered from decades of auto industry downsizing and manufacturing decline. Job growth outside a few key metros remains uneven, and younger residents often feel the need to leave in order to find faster-moving career opportunities. Climate adds another layer to the decision. Michigan's winters are long, snowy, and brutally cold, with road conditions and heating costs that wear down both budgets and patience. When residents compare those realities with the warmer, fast-growing states of the South and West, where job markets are expanding and housing feels more attainable, relocating starts to look like a smart move rather than a risky one. To be fair, places like Grand Rapids and Ann Arbor offer vibrant communities and rising industries, but statewide, these bright spots are not strong enough to offset the migration losses spreading across older regions. Michigan remains a state with deep pride and undeniable potential, but many residents clearly see more momentum elsewhere. Number 5. Maryland. Maryland is a state that looks exceptional on paper. High median income, strong schools in many suburbs, and proximity to Washington, D.C. should make it a long-term population magnet. But between April 2020 and July 2024, Maryland still lost more than 120,000 residents to other states, one of the largest domestic outflows in the Mid-Atlantic. The core issue is affordability. The financial pressure of living near the Washington-Baltimore corridor has been rising for years. Housing costs have climbed to the point where many middle-class families feel squeezed, especially when paired with rising property taxes, insurance premiums, and childcare expenses. Even households with solid incomes find that their money simply stretches farther in states with lower overall costs. Traffic is another quiet but powerful force. Commutes on the Beltway and I-95 routinely drain hours each day. And for many residents, the stress eventually outweighs the benefits of living close to federal or tech sector jobs. Remote work accelerated the shift. Once people realized they could keep their careers while living in a cheaper state, Maryland began losing residents to places like the Carolinas, Florida, Texas, and even nearby West Virginia. Maryland still offers stability, strong job opportunities, and access to major institutions. But the combination of high expenses and chronic congestion has convinced many families that their quality of life would be better elsewhere. Number 4, Louisiana. Louisiana is a state with unmistakable culture, music, food, festivals, and a sense of identity you will not find anywhere else. Yet from April 2020 to July 2024, the state lost roughly 129,000 residents through net domestic migration. For a mid-sized state, that is a massive outflow, and the reasons behind it are hard to ignore. The biggest pressures come from long-standing economic challenges. Louisiana has high poverty rates, limited economic mobility, and a job market heavily dependent on petrochemicals, ports, and tourism. While those industries bring money in, they do not consistently create broad middle-class opportunities that keep people anchored long-term. Many young residents look toward Texas, Georgia, or even the Midwest as places where wages climb faster and career options feel more stable. Crime is another major factor. New Orleans and Baton Rouge have struggled with high violent crime rates, pushing families to seek safer and more predictable communities. Add in aging public services and uneven school performance, and the appeal of leaving becomes stronger. But the climate risks truly set Louisiana apart. Hurricane seasons have grown more damaging. Insurance costs have risen sharply, and coastal erosion continues to shrink communities along the Gulf. For some residents, rebuilding after storm has simply become too much, financially and emotionally. Louisiana remains vibrant and unique, but the combination of economic strain, safety concerns, and climate pressure has driven many residents to seek a more secure future elsewhere. Number 3, Massachusetts. Massachusetts is one of the most educated and economically powerful states in the country. It has world-class universities, thriving hospitals, and some of the highest wages in the United States. Yet, from April 2020 through July 2024, the state still lost more than 162,000 residents through net domestic migration. The reason is simple. Living in Massachusetts has become financially overwhelming for a large share of its population. The housing market tells the clearest story. Home prices shot up rapidly during the early pandemic years, rising more than 20% in 2021 and more than 30% in 2022 in some greater Boston areas. For many households, even strong salaries could not keep pace. Recent housing reports estimate that a buyer now needs well over $160,000 in annual income just to afford an entry-level home near Boston. Renters feel the pressure too, facing some of the highest monthly costs in the Northeast. Taxes and everyday expenses amplify the strain. Groceries, utilities, transportation, and insurance all sit above the national average. For families balancing student loans, childcare, or elder care responsibilities, the financial load becomes unsustainable. Remote work accelerated the shift. Once people realized they could keep their job while living somewhere cheaper, states like New Hampshire, Maine, Florida, and the Carolinas became increasingly attractive. Massachusetts remains intellectually vibrant and economically strong, but the affordability crisis has pushed many residents to look for a more balanced and less stressful lifestyle elsewhere. Number 2. Illinois. Illinois has been losing residents for well over a decade, and the most recent numbers show the trend is far from slowing down. From April 2020 through July 2024, the state recorded a net domestic migration loss of more than 418,000 people, one of the largest population outflows in the entire nation. And unlike some states where losses fluctuate year to year, Illinois' decline has become a steady pattern with deep structural roots. One major factor is the overall cost of living, driven heavily by property taxes. Illinois consistently ranks among the highest in the country, burdening homeowners and discouraging long-term investment. Even middle-income families find themselves paying far more than they would in neighboring states like Indiana or Iowa, where taxes and housing costs are dramatically lower. Chicago, while still a major economic center, also plays a complicated role. Many residents cite concerns about crime, uneven neighborhood investment, and rising city expenses as reasons to leave. Some residents who once commuted downtown now work remotely and no longer feel tied to the city or its costs. Others leave simply because their income stretches 2 or 3 times farther elsewhere. Meanwhile, the state continues to face long-term financial pressures, including pension obligations that limit its ability to lower taxes or expand services. For many families, the uncertainty becomes too heavy, and relocating starts to feel like the safer long-term choice. Illinois still has strengths: cultural depth, economic influence, and world-class institutions, but none have stopped the sustained outflow. Number 1. California. California is still the dream in many people's minds. Ocean views, mountains, world-leading industries, and near-perfect weather. But from April 2020 through July 2024, the state experienced the largest domestic population loss in the entire country. More than 1,234,000 residents moved to other states. No other state even comes close to that scale, and the reasons are tied directly to the realities of daily life in California. Housing is the biggest force behind the exodus. In many coastal metros, the price of a typical home has climbed so high that even strong incomes cannot keep up. Renters face the same pressure, with monthly payments that often rival mortgage costs in more affordable states. Add in high state income taxes, expensive utilities, rising insurance premiums, and the general cost of living, and families across the middle class feel squeezed from every direction. Quality of life pressures add to the equation. Long commutes, wildfire seasons, drought concerns, and the emotional weight of living in areas where the cost of everything rises faster than paychecks all push residents to consider alternatives. Remote work removed the last barrier. Once people realized they could keep California-level salaries while living in a cheaper state, departures accelerated. Californians are not leaving because the state lacks beauty or opportunity. They are leaving because they want a version of that lifestyle that does not demand financial sacrifice at every turn. And that is why California stands at the top of this list. The largest outflow, the most dramatic shift, and the clearest symbol of how the United States is being reshaped by cost and migration. The patterns across these 12 states make one thing clear. Americans are moving not for curiosity, but for survival and stability. Housing costs, taxes, insurance, and shifting job markets are reshaping where people can realistically build a future. These decisions are personal for each family, Yet together, they form one of the most significant U.S. migration trends in recent decades. As these changes accelerate, states gaining residents will need to expand housing and infrastructure, while states losing population will face tough choices about budgets, services, and long-term planning. Understanding these forces is essential because U.S. migration trends are already influencing politics, business investment, and the geography of opportunity across the nation. The shifts documented here are not temporary disruptions. They represent structural changes in how Americans evaluate affordability, quality of life, and economic security. And as the cost of living continues to rise in certain regions while remaining manageable in others, these migration patterns will likely intensify rather than reverse. For those evaluating their own situations, the data provides clarity. Where opportunity exists, where costs have become prohibitive, and where the balance between income and expenses still makes sense. The 10 states on this list are not failing, but they are losing residents at rates that will reshape the American landscape for years to come. If this breakdown helped you understand what's really happening with U.S. migration patterns, make sure to like this video and subscribe for more in-depth analysis of housing markets, cost of living trends, and the changing American landscape. Additional resources and detailed information are available in the description below.